All right, Chair, we are recording, we're streaming. Oh,
All right.
actually, are we recording as well? Do we have that going, Dorinda?
You're live on Facebook.
Okay, great.
All right, well, welcome everyone. This is the April 7th, sorry, I'm just trying to remember my day, April 7th meeting of the Thurston Regional Planning Council. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. And I'm going to ask for our Executive Director, Mark Daly, to help me with introductions today because I don't have my list in front of me. So we'll start with introductions and then we'll move to introduce staff who are present. Mark, will you take us away?
I will. Let's start with City of Olympia.
Clark Gilman, Vice Chair representing Olympia.
And City of Lacey.
Robin Vasquez, City of Lacey.
And Tumwater.
Riley Swarthout, City of Tumwater.
And Thurston County.
Yes, sir. Gary Edwards.
And City of Rainier.
Good morning, Dennis McVeigh, City of Rainier.
And Tenino. He's looking for the mute. I can tell.
Good morning, John O'Callaghan, representing the great city of Tenino.
Okay, don't see Yelm yet. Let's go to Olympia School District.
This is Hillary Seidel from the Olympia School Board of Directors.
And Intercity Transit.
Debbie Sullivan representing Intercity Transit.
Lot.
Carolyn Cox representing Lot.
Port of Olympia.
Amy Harding, Port of Olympia. Good morning.
Morning. Thurston PUD.
Chris Stearns, Thurston PUD.
And Thurston Conservation District.
Helen Wheatley, Board of Supervisors. Morning.
Lacey Fire District 3.
Hi, Liberty Hetzler, Lacey Fire District 3.
And Evergreen State College.
Scott Morgan, Evergreen.
Let me do a quick scan and make sure. Okay, that appears to be everyone unless there is someone that I have missed. Okay, Katrina Van Every will help us go through staff present.
Good morning. From Intercity Transit, we have Peter Stackpole, Emily Bergkamp, Eric Phillips, Rob LaFontaine, and Jessica Gould. From the City of Olympia, we have Joyce Phillips and Michelle Swanson. From the City of Tumwater, Mary Heather Ames. From Thurston County, Matt Unzelman. And from TRPC, in addition to myself and Mark Daly, we have Dorinda Merrill, Berlina Lucas, Crosby Carter, Karen Parkhurst, Dave Reed, and Paul Brewster. And I believe that is all the staff present at this time.
Great, thank you. We are going to move on then. We don't have anybody else who dropped in, Mark.
Not that I have noticed. I've been watching.
All right, great. Well, let's move on to the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Edwards, so moved.
Second.
And that was Robin who seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval of the agenda, please raise your hand or signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, great. The agenda is approved. That brings us to the consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Was that John O'Callaghan?
Graham.
Oh, Graham, sorry.
No, it was Graham.
Graham moves. Anybody second?
Edwards, second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of approval of the consent calendar, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, great. The consent calendar is approved. That brings us to the public comment period. We have one member of the public signed up to give comment. Ursula Euler is here. And so we're going to wait for Ursula to either be moved into the main room or be permitted to talk. And then someone will let me know when they're ready to get started, right?
Yes, we will.
Right.
All right, Ursula, it looks like, oh, you just muted. You were unmuted and now, there you go. It looks like Ursula is in
Yeah.
and ready to go.
All right, great. Nice to see you, Ursula.
Yes,
Please go
sorry.
ahead and start when you're ready.
It just takes a little while to get everything rolling by the time you open up the panelist for me. Yes, good morning. My name is Ursula Euler. I'm here to say something as briefly as I can because I've said it before, but we'll try again. The airport issue for Thurston County is not over. Even the new legislation that forms a new group, Thurston County, Pierce County, King County are still very much on the table after that and with that group. So I just wanted to open up the idea one more time and see how you feel about that either today or in the future about having a conversation with the community, because I don't feel there really has been a conversation, maybe in a forum form. You've had Warren Hendrickson speak to you last time. I mean, it was a very short 20-minute presentation. The topic is very complex and there are many other views. There are many views that would be very informative and instructional. I mean, just even having a council member or a mayor from one of the CTAC cities come and speak to some of us, or have someone like Dr. Dan Rutherford from the International Council on Clean Transportation. It just brings fresh and out-of-the-box ideas that I think would be very important, and perhaps just to have the opportunity for the community to have a conversation with you and amongst ourselves in a civilized and in a very educational manner. And even if TRPC weren't open for that, is there at least a facility where a community group, a civil community group interested in education could use the facility with some technology, bring in some presentations through Zoom from the outside with some monitors? I mean, it already, the resources already start there. There are resources needed. So that's what I wanted to say today, perhaps in a nutshell, sort of who should be playing what role, what are the roles, what is Thurston County's role, TRPC's role in this, and how can the community be included? Just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you. Have a good meeting.
Thank you, Ursula. We appreciate your public comment. Okay, and that's the only public comment we have for today, correct, Mark? Okay, great. That brings us to the regional transportation plan. And is it, Katrina, are you bringing this to us for action?
Yes.
Great. All right, well, take it away.
So I'm going to go through this presentation very quickly. It is almost identical to the one that you saw last month regarding the proposed amendments. So for this cycle, the 2022 cycle, we had 6 proposed amendments. 2 from the City of Olympia, 1 to remove Log Cabin Road connection and add Southeast Olympia Street connectivity study. 2 from Intercity Transit to add 2 projects. 1 is the Northeast Lacey Operational Terminal Facility. That is the proposed roundabout at Meridian, Martin Way, and Deutero that would help buses turn around on the Martin Way route. And then the alternative fuel infrastructure project. And then 2 proposed amendments from TRPC staff. 1 is to update to a 5-year references to a 5-year plan cycle. Currently, we have references to a 4-year cycle. That is because we used to be in a maintenance area for air quality conformity. We are no longer in that maintenance area, and we are in conformity with air quality. And so our plan reverts to a 5-year cycle. And then finally, adding transit safety performance measures. So this is something that Intercity Transit has adopted, and we have also adopted. And so it's just time now that we've opened up the plan for amendments that these be added to our system performance report. which is, I believe, Appendix I. So the revisions affect chapters 1 for the 2, 6, and then appendices D, E, G, which would actually be deleted, Appendix I, and Appendix L. And so this just shows you which projects are affecting what parts of the plan. We did have a public comment period, which was held January 20th to February 3rd. Staff received 21 comments from people, organizations, and agencies, and most of these comments concern the log cabin road connection. So 19 of those comments supported removing the log cabin road connection. They came from members of the public, the Woodland Trail Greenway Association, and Friends of LBA Woods. And then we received 2 comments opposed to removing the log cabin road connection. And these comments came from a member of the public in the city of Lacey. So as I mentioned last month, the issues that were raised in these public comments are pretty on spot. So there were comments about impacts to the vehicle miles traveled for the Thurston region, how we balance goals of climate change work, regional mobility, and preserving open space, the need for redundancy in the road network, significant investments that have already been made by the city of Lacey and Thurston County in that area, equity impacts of building or not building the project, and consistency between local comprehensive plan and RTP. So with regard to log cabin road and regional mobility, we did ask our modeling team to compare the regional model travel forecast with the current 2045 project list and a scenario that excludes the log cabin road connection, just to understand what would happen. And without the connection, the analysis shows increased volumes and decreased speeds on multiple east-west routes in the vicinity of Log Cabin Road, and that includes Pacific Avenue, 18th Avenue Southeast, Morse Merriman Road Southeast, and Yelm Highway. And this analysis, I want to know, only evaluated the impact of removing that project, the Log Cabin Road connector, from the 2045 transportation model. It does not identify other possible solutions to maintain regional mobility, which may derive from the Southeast Olympia Street Connectivity Study that is being proposed to be added to the plan. The analysis that our modeling team did is a very high level review of regional mobility and does not identify impact to neighborhood roads, turning movements, and other important factors that really should be considered when proposing a project or pulling it out. So we are required to have a financially constrained regional transportation plan. What that means is that only projects that the region can afford to complete with existing revenues or with revenues that are reasonably expected to be available. So when you look at the 4 projects that are proposed being added to the plan, we can maintain the financial constraint of that plan, regardless of whether or not any or all of those projects are added or kept in the plan. So the TPB met last month, and their recommendation is to adopt all proposed amendments except removing the log cabin road connection. That project should remain in the RTP until the Southeast Olympia Street Connectivity Study or some other regional mobility study is performed that may eliminate the need for this connection and or identifies a viable alternative. And so your action today would be to move to adopt resolution 2023-02. That does outline the TPB's recommendation, including that language about the connection between Log Cabin Road and the Southeast Olympia Street Connectivity Study. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen, and I am happy to answer questions if there are any questions.
Thanks, Katrina. So I think our sequence here is questions and then potentially a motion to approve and then discussion of the motion. Mark, what did you want to pipe
I just
in?
have one point that I want to make sure that council's aware of, which is after the Transportation Policy Board made the recommendation to approve, we made sure to send out that result to all of the people that provided comment. And so we made another special attempt to make sure that the people that have been following this issue were aware, which is one of the reasons we thought we might have quite a bit of public comment today. So just wanted to make sure that council was aware. We took extra steps to make sure that the people that had provided comment were aware of the TPB's recommendation and that the council would potentially be taking action, the proposed action.
All right. Thanks, Mark. That's really helpful. I want to pause and acknowledge Joe's here. Sorry we didn't get to introduce you, Joe. Good to see you. Okay, so we're open for questions. So does anybody have questions before we move to discussion? Chris.
I guess it's a question I have about the air quality part where you're converting from 5 years to 4 years. What is the need for that? And what I don't understand, I guess, is that we're in a region of the country that's growing very rapidly. Air quality is deteriorating in the summertime. Frankly, I think that we need to keep an eye on our air quality, and it's not just through transportation, it's through a lot of other problems that we're having with urbanization. So I'm just wondering where the thinking is on that. What's the why are you interested in doing it this way?
So just to clarify, this isn't saying that TRPC will stop tracking air quality in the region. What it is saying is that because we are no longer in an air quality maintenance area, which is federally defined, there are things that we don't necessarily have to include in our regional transportation plan. Now, it's not a problem to continue to keep air quality conformity information in the plan, but we would have to look at updating that so that it doesn't connect to those federal requirements since they no longer apply to us.
I see. So this is a federal issue, even though we're in the Olympic region, as I recall, for the state air quality controls.
Yeah, so we work with ORCA to get that information. It is something that we keep on our website in the profile. So that is information that's still there. Again, if the preference is to leave that information in the RTP, that's not a problem. I would also mention that there's a lot of work going on through the climate implementation planning efforts. And so there's information regarding air quality there as well. And then the state is also looking at establishing performance measures for vehicle miles traveled. And so there's a nexus there as well. So this is not something that we will stop tracking. It is just something that we are no longer required to report on through the regional transportation plan.
Okay, I thanks for the clarification. I appreciate that. Just want to include that with the closure of the remaining plant in Centralia, the coal plant that's still operating, that will reduce a lot of our pollutants that travel south to north into our county. And that will be happening in about 2.5 years at the end of 2025. The first unit stopped operating at the end of 2020.
Thanks, Chris. Good clarifying question. I have Eileen and then Debbie. Go ahead, Eileen.
I was just looking at the financial or fiscal constraint portion, and there's some clarification. Because it looks like there'll be an overall reduction in expenditures. So I just wanted to understand that a little bit better. It sounds like a negative rather than a positive. So
yeah, so the financial constraint can be a little bit confusing, but again, basically the idea is that we have to have realistic projects in the regional transportation plan. It can't be pie in the sky. And so when we say financially constrained, we have to look at what is the transportation revenue or dollars that is anticipated to be spent on transportation projects over the lifetime of the plan. And so if it's 1.8 $7 billion. That's probably way out of scale with what is in the plan. But the idea is if you've got $1.7 billion pot of money to play with, a reduction in the anticipated plans means that you've got a little bit extra to work with. So let's say in the future, someone else wants to do another project. If there's enough money to add that, or in the pot to add that project in, that's why it's a good thing if there's a small reduction. So I think with regard to the TPB's recommendation, we'll see a little increase in the revenues expected to be expended on transportation projects, but we had a surplus at the start, so it's covered by including that new project. And then with the 2 interstate transit projects, they were already identified. They were in IT's financial plan for transportation. They just hadn't been specifically identified at that point in time, but they were already included in it, so it didn't affect the financial constraint of the plan.
Thanks, Katrina. Good question, Eileen. Okay, Debbie, go ahead.
So thanks, Eileen, for mentioning that, because I was going to also ask that same question, but I also had the question. So what we're voting on, just so that I'm really clear, the Transportation Policy Board said to not remove Log Cabin Road, correct? So what are we voting on? Is that include removing it or not include removing it?
So what you are voting on is all of the amendments proposed. And so TPB's recommendation was to adopt all proposed amendments except removing the Log Cabin Road connection. So 5 out of the 6 amendments would be adopted with your approval. The 6th amendment, which was removing Log Cabin Road connection, that would actually still stay in the plan. So it would not be part of the package. In the resolution, we do note that the reason for that is because it should stay there until that Southeast Olympia Street connectivity study is done, or some other regional mobility work demonstrates that that project can be removed or is no longer needed.
Thanks, Katrina. And thanks for the clarifying question, Debbie. Okay, if there are no questions, then I would entertain a motion to approve resolution 2023-02.
Move approval, John O'Callahan.
Second, Robin Vasquez.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve resolution 2023-02. Is there any further discussion about the resolution before we move to vote? Yeah, Clark, go ahead.
Good. I appreciate the last question about clarifying the Log Cabin Road, and I just wanted to make clear that Olympia's staying the course with our path of we're removing it from our documents, and believe that having a Southeast Olympia street connectivity study will help us look again as the need becomes more immediate for the best way to keep people moving east-west in that part of the city. But I just wanted to be clear that we're not changing our actions based on this decision, but we can live with it being in the regional transportation plan this way.
Thanks, Clark. Is there any other further discussion about the resolution? All right. So seeing none, let's go ahead and move to the vote. All those in favor of adoption of resolution 2023-02, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand, or both.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And are there any abstentions? All right, great. The resolution passes. Thank you, Katrina. And that brings us to the Intercity Transit STBG Award. And is that Paul? Yes. Okay. Ooh, good guess. I'm having to click back and forth to my agenda today. So, all right, Paul, take it away.
Good morning, council members. So in your role as the Metropolitan Planning Organization, you select priority projects for Federal Highway Administration transportation funding you just completed a call for projects in December 2022. One of the projects you selected is Intercity Transit's East Martin Way Gateway Roundabout project, and that's the subject of your action item today that I'm presenting. So starting in January each year, TRPC staff starts coordinating with the city, county, and other member transportation awardees to start to assess and check in on the status of obligation for projects moving forward to make sure that we're going to meet our obligation target. And so we're required to meet our annual allocation of federal funding obligation target each year by around September 25th. But there is a bonus round that if we meet our obligation target by June 30th, TRPC may be positioned to receive additional obligation authority or redistributed funds from other regions around the state that were unable to meet their obligation authority. And so we kind of have our own version of March Madness this year when we learned that the city of Olympia experienced extraordinary circumstances with negotiating right-of-way for its Phones Road Transportation Improvement Project. Thurston County also had to shift a couple projects around. So it left Katrina, Theresa, Mark, and I dribbling a bunch of projects through hoops to try to figure out how we might be able to meet that bonus round and achieve our June 30th deadline for the additional obligation authority. Alas, we're not gonna shoot that hoop, but we are planning to hit our obligation target by September. So with all that said, TRPC reached out to Intercity Transit requesting if they would by chance be able to obligate their East Martin Way Gateway project this year rather than what we programmed in June 2024, by June 24. And they are, because Intercity Transit has a little more flexibility in how they can obligate funds through transferring Federal Highway Administration funds to Federal Transit Administration funds. And so in order to make that happen, it involves a slight change in the scope, and the council must approve changes in scope. And so really the change in scope here is that you originally awarded Intercity Transit funding for the PE phase, and Intercity Transit is requesting that to obligate the funding sooner. It would like that funding, the funding to be flexible for any phases that may come, as Intercity Transit is actively pursuing other grant funds to expedite the implementation of this project. So with that said, a copy of the amended award letter is in your packet. That award letter with your action today is ready for Mark's signature and delivery to Emily Bergkamp at Intercity Transit. And so really the major changes that's in that award letter is we're moving the date to June 2023, so Intercity Transit can start doing a STIP amendment and making that funding flexible. And so next steps with your action today, we'll issue that award letter to Intercity Transit. That starts the ball rolling for Intercity Transit to do a STIP amendment. And really on our end, this is a simple administrative modification because this project is already programmed in Appendix A of our Regional Transportation Improvement Program, but it will take a month's time for the state to process that amendment. So we expect that STIP amendment to be approved by mid-May, which would then allow Intercity Transit to initiate the process for the FTA funds transfer request. Then we would anticipate that obligation going through by the end of June. However, since we know we're not going to meet that June 30th bonus round funding target, the pressure is off. So we do have more time and expect that this project should obligate prior to September. So with that, staff is seeking your action to approve the amended award letter for Intercity Transit's East Martin Way Gateway project. Any questions?
Move approval.
Thank you, Paul. Are there any questions about the proposed amendment? Okay. If so, is there a motion to approve the amended award letter for the Intercity Transit East Martin Way Gateway Project?
So moved. John O'Callahan.
Is there a second?
This is Debbie. I'll second.
The clock or Debbie seconds the motion. Okay. Is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of approving the amended award letter for Intercity Transit East Martin Way Gateway Project, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand or both.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, any abstentions? No, great. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
All right. That takes us to the transportation performance measures. And who do we have bringing that to us? Oh, it's Katrina again. Hi,
It's me.
Katrina. And this is a first, is this a first reading for us?
This is a first review, yes.
Okay, great. Take it away.
No action needed today. This is for informational purposes. Let's get everything situated. Okay, so federal transportation performance measures. So you may or may not remember or know that we track 8 different transportation performance measures. Safety, our safety transportation or performance measure is actually Target Zero. It's something that was adopted in 2017, and each year we reaffirm with WashDOT, excuse me, that we continue to measure progress towards achieving the safety performance target using data on fatalities and serious injuries for both motorists and non-motorists, so pedestrians and bicyclists primarily. We also have transit-related performance measures that we adopt after Intercity Transit adopts them. And so that's transit asset management. So that is, you know, the buses and the vans that are van pool vans that are utilized and how well they are maintained. There's also transit safety. So are there accidents? Are there people injured while utilizing IT facilities? So those are something that you will hear in the near future, but we're not talking about those today. So what we are talking about today are pavement, bridge, highway system, and freight. We are not talking about congestion mitigation or CMAQ because TRPC is in compliance with federal clean air standards, as we talked about for the RTP amendments, and we're no longer in a maintenance area. The CMAQ performance measures no longer apply to TRPC. So we're in this weird world where we still receive dollars to program out for CMAQ, but we don't have any performance measures associated with it because we are in compliance with air quality standards. It's a weird middle ground right now. So what we need to do is look at these 4 statewide targets. So working with metropolitan planning organizations, WashDOT established performance measures and targets for pavement condition, bridge condition, system performance and congestion, and freight movement in 2018. At that time, TRPC elected to support the WashDOT measures rather than adopting our own, but that is an option. And each of these targets is therefore measured at the state level, not at the local level. So it's not measured we do not have a specific target for the Thurston region. It is just that we are expected to help WashDOT meet their targets for these different performance measures. So on December 16th, of last year, WashDOT adopted updated performance measures and targets. And so by June 14th of this year, we must either support WashDOT measures or adopt our own. Supporting the WashDOT measures includes agreeing to plan and program projects so that they contribute towards the accomplishment of the relevant WashDOT target. And that is something that we already do. These performance measures include both 2- and 4-year targets, and you'll see that in the staff report. As I understand it, only the 4-year targets really apply to our region. That said, this may change when we become a transportation management area. But again, these are statewide targets. They are not specific just to the Thurston region. So when I show you WashDOT didn't provide a lot of information specific to our region. So I know that you're going to want to know, well, if we're talking about pavement, how's our pavement doing? We don't necessarily have that information at hand, but where I have it, I will share it. So pavement performance measures, there are 4 of them, and they are related to the interstate and non-interstate on the national highway system. So you'll see that system on the map here. So a state facility is basically the interstate and the highways. And then local facilities are those non-interstate on the national highway system. And so they're looking for the percent of pavement in poor condition and the percent of pavement in good condition. And so in this chart, what you see is the performance from 2017, the performance in 2021, and what our current 4-year target is or the state's current 4-year target is. So what we see is that 2021 saw an improvement over 2017 in pavement condition, but the 4-year target indicates that pavement conditions are anticipated to deteriorate. And that is because there is a maintenance backlog. So here we see bridges. There are 2 measures relating to bridge condition. Again, the percent of bridges in good condition and percent of bridges in poor condition. There are 62 bridges on the national highway system in Thurston County. Only 3 bridges we only have 3 bridges that are local. Everything else is is a state controlled bridge. And so those 3 local bridges are either in fair or good condition. Again, 2021 saw a small increase in bridges classified in poor condition. There was really no difference for the percentage classified in good condition. The 4-year target reflects, again, a maintenance backlog. So what we're seeing is that we're going to see a reduction in the bridges that are classified in good condition and an increase in those that are in poor condition. I do want to note that a bridge in poor condition does not mean the bridge is unsafe for travelers or in danger of collapse, but it does indicate that there are advanced deficiencies that need to be addressed. And Robin, I see your hand up.
Katrina, is the number for us, that 7.8 in 2017 and 8.8 in 2021, just the 3 bridges, or is it all 62 in the county?
No.
Do we know what the status of the 3 is?
Those are statewide. And so I don't have specific information on just the bridges in Thurston County, with the exception that I know that the 4th Avenue Bridge and the Capitol Boulevard Bridge, those are not on the list of bridges in poor condition that WashDOT publishes.
Thank you.
Chris? Hey, are you finished,
Sure.
Katrina, or?
I'm not.
Okay, could we hold questions till the end of the presentation, and that way Katrina can get through the whole presentation? Is that okay with you, Katrina?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
So the next one that we have is highway system performance. And that it looks at it's about reliability. How much congestion is there on the system? And so it looks at how long does it take you to get from point A to point B? And is it a reliable travel time? So the highway system performance measures indicate, again, that travel time reliability. 2021 saw improvements in congestion on the interstate system and other parts of the national highway system. I don't think that staff at WashDOT necessarily shared why that was, but I think it is probably related to the pandemic and changes in how people travel. So as what you see here again is that 4-year target indicates increased congestion between 2021 and 2025. I think we've already started to feel that in our region as people have begun to drive more coming out of the pandemic. And then finally, what we have is freight reliability. So reliability measures, again, travel time reliability on, and in this instance, it's only related to the interstate. And it's similar to the highway system performance measure. It's based on truck travel time reliability, but it only applies again to the interstate. An index of 1.5 or lower indicates travel times are reliable. Anything over 1.5 indicates that it is not reliable. And so again, this performance measure applies statewide, but I do have here some information regarding our region and what I-5 looks like. So everything in green, that dark green and light green, indicates that the travel time is reliable. Everything in red, yellow, and orange indicates that it is less reliable. And so staff's recommendation with regard to these four performance measure topics is that we support WashDOT and continue to do so as they are periodically updated. We suggest that supporting these measures as we already plan and program projects that support various performance measures that WashDOT has. Staff also recommends continuing to support these measures as they are periodically updated. And so this can be done in the same manner that we do the safety targets, that target zero. What we would do is send WashDOT a letter when these targets are measured or these performance measures are updated again, reaffirming our agreement to plan and program projects so that they contribute to accomplishing the relevant WashDOT goals. So the process looks like this. Yesterday we had a review with TAC. There weren't any concerns with staff's proposal. None were voiced anyway. Today is council's first review, so you're not expected to take any action today, but any questions or other issues you might have, we can talk through. So this will go next week to TPB for a review and recommendation, and then back to you all in May for action. So in October, we'll integrate these updates into the RTIP, and then in July 2025, which is when we anticipate you would adopt the next regional transportation plan update. We would integrate these changes into the RTP as well. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Katrina. And thanks, folks, for holding your questions. Chris, I know you were in the queue. If you have questions, if you can raise your hand and let me know, and I will add you to the queue. Chris, go ahead.
Thank you. Just a question about the crossings and bridges that you mentioned. These are just main thoroughfares that are of interest to our Department of Transportation in our county. I'm just wondering how this interfaces with some of the work we're also forced to do due to salmon recovery, where culverts are getting replaced with bridges. I can think of one in Green Cove Creek that's in northwest, not far from Northwest Olympia. And why I mention this is because as we age out, our culverts that were put in the 60s and 70s are all going to be needing replacement at some point in time. And that requires, in some cases, if they're salmon-bearing streams, not to be culverts anymore, like this instance that I just mentioned. So although they may not be main transportation corridors, they're an added expense to the county to replace all these things, whether they're culverts or bridges or some form of, or ending the crossing as it is. So I'm just trying to figure out where we're at with that, because if this just involves thoroughfares, there's still a burden of cost to the county to fix these other circumstances.
Yeah, so absolutely. What I'm talking about is just a statewide performance measures, which is generally limited to the national highway system. So it is,
Okay.
as you said, those main thoroughfares. Now, I would also say that there are a number of different programs where funding can be made available for those culvert replacements and bridge replacements. There's a bridge program. We do serve as the lead entity for the, is it Deschutes Park?
Yes, Water Resources Inventory Area 13, Deschutes Watershed, correct?
Yeah, so we have a small pot of funding that they work through for looking specifically at those fish bearing streams and what would increase the range and availability for that. And so that's a lot of culvert work or bridge, replacing culverts with bridges. And I'm sure there are other programs out there, but I'm not knowledgeable about them specifically.
Well, our Congresswoman Marilyn Strickland has found funding for 3/4 of the cost from federal infrastructure funds. We're still looking for a state match for it, I think, which may or may not come out of the capital budget, depending on where it's traveled to. But certainly, as a utility, since we have water line crossing that area, we have to pay that for that ourselves. And that's a $1.2 million project because we have to provide temporary service while the bridge is out or the culvert is pulled. So, and it is quite a canyon, which is why it's probably being turned into a bridge. So I just want to let people know that we're trying to coordinate as best we can with county roads. There's been a lot of turnover, as you mentioned, with staff in Olympia and in the county public works, but hopefully we can mesh this because shouldn't pass up that 3-to-1 funding from the feds.
Just on that very quickly, the state does have the Brian Abbott Fish Passage Barrier Removal Program, which is the budgets have different levels, but it's looking to be increased pretty substantially this biennium. And those funds can be used to match federal funds. So the state is looking to make sure that we can capitalize on available federal funding.
And we do have Squaxin sign off on this project, I'm pretty sure.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the update, Mark, and the question, Chris. And the answer, Katrina. Okay, Debbie, you are next.
So my question is that I sit on the executive advisory board for the WashDOT improvement from Mounts Road to 93rd, and we're really focusing on Mounts Road to Martin Way right now. So does this data and this program fit into the larger WashDOT program that's in our area?
I'll let Mark take that one.
Yeah, I can answer that. Yes, it does. In terms of both the bridges northbound and southbound that are currently under consideration for the Mounts Road to Marvin Road in particular, those are part of this bridge inventory. Right now, if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure they're both in fair condition, I believe. But the answer is yes, they are, that the data for those two bridges is part of this.
Thanks, Mark. Good question, Debbie. Are there any other questions that folks have about the presentation? Okay, so it sounds like this will come back to us in May. And just a reminder, if you want to tune in to the TPB meeting and listen to their discussion, that's always an option. Katrina, can you remind us when that will be?
Their meeting is on April 12th at 7:30 in the morning. So Wednesday next week.
All right.
7:30 a.m.
So if you want to hear more discussion about this, tune in then, and we'll see it back here on the, what is that, the 4th or the 5th? The 5th?
Yes, I believe it is the 5th.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you very much. That brings us to, we have a scheduled break for 5 minutes and we're running ahead of schedule. So I'm going to give you 7 minutes, guys. 7 minutes. Let's come back at 9:27. So get yourself like an extra cup of coffee or do a few extra steps, and I'll see you in 7 minutes. All right. We all back? Got our extra steps in. Okay, let's see here. Oh, I've lost my agenda. I think we have the subcommittee for
Urban
my,
Growth Management Subcommittee. That's correct, Chair.
I'm
and
working,
Karen-
I'm working on one computer today, guys. So thank you to those of you who are assisting me in trying to manage it. Who is giving us this presentation? Is this Karen? All
Yes,
right.
it is.
All right, Karen, take it away.
Okay, thank you. This is really an informational item today to let people know what our process is when there are proposed changes to the urban growth boundary, and that we have a request to move forward on convening our urban growth management subcommittee. So this is part of growth management, which includes comprehensive plans that are developed by each of the jurisdictions that are planning under the Growth Management Act. We're also required to have countywide planning policies. And these policies basically say, here's how we're going to work with each other at the edges of our boundaries. Here are those things we generally agree about. There's some visionary statements in here. And then there is a process here. So basically it says that if someone requests that we change the urban growth boundaries, then that jurisdiction that has that request does their due diligence. They have their usual process of hearings, of planning commission work, of all of those things happening. And then if they are being asked to do a change in the boundary, then the second part kicks in. And that is that TRPC is required to convene the Urban Growth Management Subcommittee. The subcommittee is comprised of people from each of the jurisdictions. These are elected officials from each of the jurisdictions, and their job is to review this. The idea behind this, obviously, is to say a change in boundary impacts all of us. So it's important that we all be able to weigh in on that. It's also important to remember that this committee just makes a recommendation to, in this case, the Board of County Commissioners, and the Board of County Commissioners makes that final decision. And so we are getting the regional perspective is really what this piece is about. So we have a very thick packet of information about 3 requests in the Grand Mound sub area. And 3 different organizations and individuals have requested changes in the boundary. So what we will be doing is in probably next week, we will be reaching out to the mayors of your organizations as well as your planning directors to say we would like you to appoint someone to this committee. We'll be asking for an appointee and a backup person, just knowing how hard it is to schedule everyone and that there are demands on everyone's time. We would hope that this could be accomplished in 1 meeting, but we likely will set up 2 meetings, which will, we hope, happen in May. And we will provide you with all the materials when we send out the invitation, as well as to your planning folks so that they can help you in looking at this request. Like I said, we'll hold a second meeting if necessary. By the end of May, we hope to transmit the subcommittee recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners. And at that time, they will then go back to their process and make their decision about these. So that's really it. This is something that we do not convene very often. We convene it upon request of an individual jurisdiction or multiple jurisdictions. The last time we had this group together was in 2014 and 15. And at that time, it wasn't about a particular request. At that time, we were updating the countywide planning policies to reflect the changes that we all agreed to in Sustainable Thurston. So sometimes it meets to do those upgrades, sometimes it meets because we have a request. So this is really, here's what the process looks like. These will be public meetings, they will be noticed meetings, there will be an opportunity for public comment. But it is important to let folks know that this is a separate process than the county. The county will continue to be the decision makers in this. This is just a recommendation. So that's basically what I have to talk to you about today. I'm open to any questions, comments, concerns.
Thanks, Karen. I see Chris is in the queue, and I see Helen as well, and I'm going to bump Helen up. So we'll go Helen, Chris, and Debbie.
Actually, I'd like to go the other way around. I'd like to be the last person.
Okay.
Because I have a comment rather than a question.
Okay. All right. So Chris and then Debbie with questions, and then Helen with a comment.
So I guess the question I have is, Grand Mound is not an urban area. Grand Mound is an unincorporated entity. And it is my pet peeve that unincorporated entities in Thurston County don't pay for themselves. You know, whether it be Boston Harbor, Steamboat Island, or Rochester and Grand Mound, Little Rock, etc. So what I'm concerned about with this is why is this being done before an elected official is being created for that specific part of the county in the transition to a 5-county commission? Why are we bringing this up now? This seems to be very much jumping the gun as far as not having their own elected official. Although I believe right now, Ty Menser represents that district. It's my district too, by the way.
Okay.
And I
good
do have
question.
water systems in that area too, I might add, for the PUD.
So I think the question is the timing, and
Right.
we are responding to a request from the Board of County Commissioners, which is what triggers this. But they are responding to a request from folks in Grand Mound to make this change. So it really isn't about timing of a larger picture. It's about the timing of the normal process of requesting this. So I think your comments are interesting, and I think the whole discussion of what you have brought up, like I said, is interesting, but I'm not sure that it's relevant here. We are doing a process that is required under the law and that we have put in place as members of the community, you elected officials in the countywide planning policies, that this is the way the process works.
So I understand that process pretty well. I've tracked urban growth management around Olympia for many years earlier in my time here. Grand Mound is not an incorporated area. It doesn't have any elected officials to deal with. The county initiated putting 5 commissioners on our commission. Didn't come from the public. So I'm just curious why the cart is before the horse on this one. It doesn't make any sense from a point of view of effective representation of the people impacted by this decision, including the water system customers that I have in the Grand Mound area.
Okay, so I want to clarify, I want to make sure I understand. I think, Karen, you're saying that the county is the one who says, hey, we need to bring this group together. So maybe that's a question for the county, and maybe we can ask. I mean, I don't think Commissioner Edwards is with us anymore, and I don't want to put anyone on the spot. but
Oh,
perhaps
no,
ask-
I'm here, Hillary.
Oh, you are here.
Yeah.
I know we're gonna go kind of like off the cuff here, but Commissioner Edwards, is that a question that you can answer for us?
Well, I don't disagree with Chris on his process of thinking this out and who's going to be available to address things when. But Ty has been representing that district right along, and it looks more like it's just a continuation of the process, and we didn't put anything on hold to finish out the 5-commissioner process, because honestly, we didn't even know if the public was going to support that concept early on until the voters did have their say. And so I don't think we made any adjustments about waiting for different implementation periods. That includes kind of like the expanded Board of Health. We did some things different there as well. So although I understand what Chris is talking about, and I'd be interested in having some dialogue with Chris later if he thinks there's an issue that maybe we're not capturing, especially having to do with his position on the PUD. So I can only say we didn't attempt to make any changes because we didn't exactly know what was going to happen. So,
Chair, can I jump the queue a little bit?
Yeah, just one second. I want to make sure. Okay. So thank you, Commissioner Edwards. I appreciate that. So Helen, what I hear you saying is you would like to move back up to the front of the queue.
Yeah, because it's sort of an answer to, I can or speak to a little bit of this. And I think it is, although it's not just about the boundaries. I think this is a good opportunity to talk about Grand Mound. I'm also on the County Planning Commission, so I probably know as much about the planning process around this as anybody, and it was not an easy process. I was in Chris's camp on some of these issues, not on the representation issue, because this is a kind of an old docket item that just moved up, and it was largely pushed by requests for expansion of the UGA and some zoning changes within the UGA. But I, as a member of the County Planning Commission, did bring up and was concerned about this issue that people using the water system are going to have to pay for this, for the expansion. That's how the funding is going to happen. And so that was a concern to me. And I totally agree. And I don't think that the residents of Grand Mound and the users of that water system were given a heads up about this. There was a public meeting or two in Grand Mound, but I don't think it was advertised to make people aware that this was an issue. And so, you know, I'm with them on that. There were some major expansions of the UGA that the Planning Commission decided to recommend against, and the commissioners apparently agreed, because with UGAs, you're really not supposed to expand them when you have ample room within the UGA. And Grand Mound, according to the Buildable Lands Report, has tons and tons of land already within it. And so you're not really supposed to expand the boundaries of the UGA when there's plenty of land within. And then I just wanted to mention a couple of, you know, this kind of bounces off of Chris's comments. I think that the county really needs to think hard about what kind of a UGA Grand Mound is. It's very unusual for being a UGA that, as Chris pointed out, doesn't have representation. I think that the county needs to start to think about how Grand Mound can represent itself, because it's it's quite different. I learned when I was doing research for the Grand Mound process on the Planning Commission. It's got a very high Hispanic population. And there's an assumption that it's kind of just like Rochester, but it really isn't. It's quite different. And it's also, the UGA is a bit different to the larger sort of census tract of Grand Mound. And I'm growing increasingly concerned about the lack of representation within Grand Mound for its residents. And I would like to, I actually really am happy I have an opportunity to bring this up, because I would like the TRPC to think about this in the future in terms of the outreach work that it does, because I don't feel that, I think there was an assumption that Rochester and Grand Mound are the same thing when the outreach was done and when the planning is done. And they're really not anymore. I think they maybe used to be, but they're growing increasingly different. And I think that the county should spend some time thinking about that distinction. And one of the expansions of the UGA that was approved was very much around the issue of housing and housing density. And it was basically a landowner who wants to put in some dense housing. And there really wasn't an opportunity. I mean, I think that the Planning Commission came down on the side of thinking that it made sense. But there was not really, Grand Mound needs a lot more work on how to integrate its transportation planning and its zoning and its representation. So I'm done there. I have a lot to say about Grand Mound, but I'll stop now. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Yeah, it sounds like maybe there's some good, rich discussion to be had about just incorporated areas of the county versus unincorporated areas of the county. I want to recognize that we had some folks kind of bump into the queue. Joe, I saw your hand up, but now it's not up. Are you still wanting to ask a question or?
I did, but I wanted to speak before. It's all good.
Are you
good.
sure?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to bump, I see Amy has her hand up, so I'm going to bump. And Chris, is your hand still up or is that an old hand?
It's just a point of clarification, that's all.
Okay, so let's go. We'll do Amy and then Debbie and then back to Chris.
Thank you. I guess I just have a little bit different perspective on Grand Mound. There has been an abundance of public meetings over the course of years on this issue, with different residents coming from different perspectives participating. I think you have although maybe not formally organized, very active participation from people there. And they are currently represented at the county level by Ty Menser. Going to 5 commissioners, they will have different representation, but I think Ty does an excellent job of advocating for South County and getting out and interacting with the constituents there. So from a real estate perspective, Grand Mound is definitely changing, and the demands and interests of the landowners there, both the residential and the commercial. I think that's why you see this rising to the level it has at the county. So I would just say I have a little bit different perspective from talking to people and looking at things from the real estate side. So just considering that there's a diversity of opinions on Grand Mound and solving it's going to require listening to all those voices.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. Okay, Debbie and then Chris.
So I just had just a quick comment, and this isn't necessarily related to Grand Mound, but there's also a possibility of another group wanting to add to the UGA south of Tumwater. And so I was wanting to know if this would be included in that, or if that would end up going through a different process, because we don't do this very often, or if that's even going to be a thing or come through. So I'm not sure if Karen even knows which area I'm talking about, but that one just kind of like popped up out of nowhere. And it is outside the UGA. We would have to change that. So I didn't know if that would be, when you do UGA, how broad, or is it very specific? So that was just my only question.
It's very specific. So we are responding with this group to a request from a jurisdiction or multiple jurisdictions. So when the city of Tumwater finish their process to take action on this, or the Board of County Commissioners, depending on where it is, then it would come back and go through this same process. So we really, I know I'm focusing on process as opposed to what the issues are. Our role is really not about defining the issues. The issues are defined at the jurisdictional level when it goes through their normal process. We then convene a meeting. And so this group is convened at the pleasure of a specific jurisdiction that makes a request. And typically those don't happen all at the same time. So we would be bringing the committee back together. I understand that the county also has another one coming up. So we would be reconvening the committee as we are requested by a particular jurisdiction.
Thanks, Karen. That was actually a little bit of my question too, considering that we haven't had this group come together for so long. Can we bundle some of these together so you don't have to like recruit new members every time? Great, but it sounds like if there's another one convened, it might be easier for the jurisdictions to just send their people who they sent last time, which is great. Okay, we're gonna go to Chris and then Helen again.
Two simple points of clarification, just in case people don't know the new districts, which I do have a map of. Southwest County is a wholly South County district. I think it's either District 4 or 5, whichever one it is. It includes Rainier, Tenino, Bucota, Grand Mound, Rochester, and some of the southern precincts of Tumwater. Doesn't go above Black Lake at all. So it's not in the North County whatsoever. So it would be, along with Gary's new district, the only two that are representing the South County. Gary's district represents Yelm and Lawrence Lake where he lives. So just wanted to clarify that. I have no complaints with Ty. I know he does pay attention to Rochester and other areas where he's worked very hard on. So that was not the source of my comment. And the second one is about the water system. A lot of people are not aware in Thurston County that the Grand Mound water system is owned by the county, not by the PUD. Even had this confusion with Lewis County over the water rights. That was granted to the water system in Lewis County that they didn't particularly like and blamed us for something the county did. So I just want you to know that that system is owned by the county, just like Boston Harbor is owned by the county too. So what I'm pointing out here, because I have water systems, they're smaller in that area. They're small, they're medium to small size systems, some group A's, some group B's, is that they are in a shallow aquifer that flows very rapidly and moves around depending on the season of the year, which direction the water moves. Hard to trace pollution in that circumstance, and easy to pollute because it's so close to the surface. So the League of Women Voters, along with Karen Fraser, somebody I think all of you know, led up a quite interesting seminar on the Grand Mound area with the county, including staff from the county, to explain to the public what is going on with this water resource, which is very fragile, but has a lot of people dependent on it, and yet has not incorporated, neither is Rochester, for that matter, Little Rock, or any of the areas in the South County that are not already incorporated. So I'm just concerned about their expansion. I, as a North County resident, don't like paying for South County services when they should incorporate and start paying for their own. But it's an ethic down there that I don't agree with, where businesses don't want to pay for sidewalks, etc. So, or elected officials. So they're living with it, but I don't want to pay for it. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. I see Helen. And go ahead, Helen.
Yeah, well, I want to answer, I might have an answer to Debbie Sullivan's question, but I just, again, Chris sets off things for me. I have to reinforce him. Maybe a lot of people here don't know that the Grand Mound UGA was not created to become a density district. It's a really unusual UGA because it was created because of that shallow aquifer and because of it's a water source. It's a critical aquifer, and there was a need to create this water and sewer system because the threat of pollution to people's drinking water. So it's a really kind of a strange UGA, and I think it's good for everybody here to sort of know that. It's a little bit of the geography. Not all UGAs are the same. Sometimes there's a really unusual kind that's created, and then over time it's kind of been assumed that it's supposed to grow, but that wasn't really the original intention. But that's a whole other story. If I know which piece of property Debbie Sullivan was asking about, and I don't necessarily, but I think probably it's a docket item that was recommended to go through the Planning Commission process. And it might get pushed back because there's so much focus on putting resources into the Growth Management Act update. And so some of those docket items are going to be pushed back. And so it may not see any action this time around, if it's the piece of property that I'm thinking it is.
Thank you. That's good clarification.
Okay, I see Commissioner Edwards with the hand up. Chris, is that an old hand? Oh, no, your hand's down. Okay, Commissioner Edwards, go ahead.
I just wanted to let folks know, because the topic was brought up, that those folks down in the Grand Mound area have had discussions about an incorporation move as well. So just so kind of everything is being kicked around. That's all I just wanted to point out. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Edwards. It's a good, rich conversation, and TRPC's hold of it is just like hanging on to this process component. But I think sometimes when we talk about the process, it stirs up questions about the impact and the origination. Oh, Joe, your hand is back up. Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you. So I just want to clear, this is just to create the subcommittee that's going to create a recommendation.
That's correct.
So I don't understand what people's angst is about starting this process. Like Commissioner Edwards was saying, it's not like it just started. This has been something that works for a while now. And so I just don't understand the huge angst about just having the conversation. It's a recommendation. I don't believe it's ties the commissioner's hands if they disagree with it or they don't want to, enact it. I'd say we move forward with it. And just lastly, I kept hearing that, this area isn't represented. It is represented, is been mentioned. Whether you agree that, obviously with less or more districts, it's going to increase, that representation, but they are still represented. And I don't know how often Commissioner Menzer goes down there, or how I'm not judging how well he represents his district, but I do think that it's kind of a slap in his face saying they aren't represented. That's who they represent, that unincorporated parts of Thurston County. That's Grand Mound's a very big portion of that, I would imagine, for his populace and his constituents. So I just want to mention that. Other than that, I like to make the motion that we approve.
No motion is needed, Joe. We are not taking action. This is actually just TRPC informing us that they have been asked by the jurisdiction to form the subcommittee, and that work will begin.
Oh, well, in that case, I'd love to be on the subcommittee then.
Well, wait for the invitation coming to a council meeting near you. So
Thank you.
Just to clarify, Karen, my understanding is then what will happen is the jurisdictions will receive a request for a representative and a backup. So if you have an interest in this work and your jurisdiction will receive an invitation, put your name in the hat. And then also, it just sounds like people have a lot of interest in this dialogue. And so I would just remind everyone, as Karen shared with us, these are public meetings. And if you have an interest in hearing how this work is deliberated and how people come up with a recommendation to send to the county commission, that could be a really interesting meeting to attend to. Are there any additional questions for Karen about the process, or anything at all to share about this?
I would just say that certainly we have all heard that when it's time to update the countywide planning policies again, after the updates of the count or jurisdictional plans, that this would be a topic that's out there on the list. I know Mark has added it to the topics that will be on the list when we look at these again. So it sounds like there's lots of interest. And as I have said, today we aren't here to talk about the merits of it, only the process of it, which is our role. And so you will be notified. I will, in the invitation that goes out to the mayors, I will CC our members of the policy board and the council for those jurisdictions, so that if you want to jump up and say, please let me be on it, you'll know when the message goes out.
Great. Thank you, Karen. And I will just also put a plug in, as I mentioned, I might, is that, school districts are not included in these conversations, but how growth happens in communities, the way that people often experience that growth immediately is where their kids go to school and how quickly schools are built. And so even though it's not required in the planning policy, which I hope will be updated eventually, I want to strongly encourage the subcommittee and the county to be really intentional about including a process to listen to and talk with their school districts about how these will impact where kids go to school, and just having good, frank conversations about if growth happens, where those students will attend school. And more than just, it's a public meeting, come and give public comment. But I can't emphasize enough how valuable it would be to sit in on some of the conversations that are happening in school district right now about redrawing boundaries and trying to understand deeply how to make sure that children and families have their needs met in their local schools. So there's my little soapbox, and I'll climb off of it. Unless there's additional comments or questions, we'll move on to, I think we're to you, right, Mark? Executive Director's report.
I just have one comment regarding Joe's comment. I have no complaints about how the county commission addresses all county issues because they're elected countywide, as am I, as am the Port of Olympia. But my point is they're not going to get nominated by that area anymore. I'm the only elected official that's currently serving that they will be able to vote on to nominate in the next election where they can do so. So that's why I'm making my points, because Ty or Gary doesn't represent that area, but that they only have a voice through the new commissioner. And that's why I'm making the point that I'm making, is I think that whoever that is should have some say in what goes on in their district, as I do in mine.
Okay, Chris, thank you. Noted. And I apologize, I skipped over outside reports, Helen. I don't have my agenda in front of me. So we're going to move to outside reports. And I think that's just you, right, Helen?
Yeah, probably. It usually is. And we're under time constraints. I understand that because we're getting close to 10. Are we? Or are we?
No.
Oh, we're not. Oh, okay, good. That's unusual for me. We usually are. Okay, so well, this is about the Growth Management Advisory Board of the Puget Sound Regional Council. I sit on that, and Joe DePinto is an alternate. So it's I think first I want to, if I could just put up those two, there's two announcements I want to make sure that I get out. Is it Berlina who's there? Or, can we just put those up? Yeah, so the first one here is, a lot of you already probably know that there's this Passport to 2044 series that is, it's really excellent. It's a series of workshops that the agencies you see on the bottom there have been putting on to help the Central Puget Sound jurisdictions, mostly the planners, understand what's required and what they can do as part of the comprehensive plan update process. And of course, a lot of the focus is on aligning it with their Vision 2050 plan. But a lot of it is hugely germane to what Thurston County is doing. And I wanted to point out that Tumwater actually participated in their climate chapter workshop. And they came up at the meeting yesterday and got huge praise as a really good example of how smaller cities can approach climate change in their planning. So we're not only welcome to attend these things, but actually participating in them. And so that slide, can we put that slide back up just for a sec? Or I can't see it, but maybe other people can. I see you, Hillary, but anyway, well, it's announcing that the next session that they're going to have in May is actually for electeds. Planning commissioners, elected officials, and planners are welcome to this one. And it's kind of an overview, an introduction, and a chance to ask questions and to hear from panelists who are also elected officials who are a year ahead of Thurston County about their experiences with the update process. So, I really wanted people to know about that. That might be really useful for some folks to attend if you want to understand more about how this process works and if you have questions to ask of people who've gone through it. And then the next slide is an announcement they've also been doing, and maybe I've been listening to what they've been talking a lot about their equity planning, and that really has affected the way I think about Grand Mound, by the way. They've been doing a lot of work on equity and outreach, and they've been doing a series of workshops, again, very much focused on bringing in elected officials as well as staff members to learn to think about equity and then and how to apply it. And this next session, which is later this month, is about a process. It's kind of a developed process for learning how to have difficult conversations about equity issues, and particularly about race. And it's gotten high praise for its practicality, not only for working around that issue, but also just dealing with members of the public who might be on the other side from you or might be difficult in some way to deal with. It's kind of a methodology for learning how to turn that into a positive process in a public sphere. So I don't know, it just seemed kind of people might be interested in that. So those are the announcements. It's kind of an announcement that the next meeting that they're going to have in May is actually going to be focused on countywide planning policies. So it's very timely that TRPC is kind of bringing this up too, because they are kind of moving that way. And they're also going to be talking about stormwater at the next meeting. But I wanted to share a little bit. At this meeting yesterday, Kitsap County brought forward for recommendation its changes to its CWPP to make it more in alliance with the changes to the Growth Management Act and to Vision 2050. And I just wanted to take a second to talk about how they're approaching it, just, to help maybe prime the pump. It's kind of a useful, I think this what they brought forward is maybe a useful model for thinking ahead to how to align policies with the new requirements. Their Vision 2050 calls for countywide planning policies to address 5 specific areas. And those areas are to support joint planning and coordination, which, Hillary, your comments about education districts, that's, I think, what they're trying to address is the ones they listed were, among coordination among jurisdictions, among agencies, with tribes, with ports, and with military installations and special purpose districts. So some of the stuff we talked about today around Grand Mound, those are particular focuses for the Central Puget Sound region. And then also to prioritize services and access to opportunity for people of color, people with low incomes, and historically underserved communities, to recognize the impacts and challenges of military installations, to prioritize transportation for regional centers and high capacity transit. And that's kind of more specific to the way that Central Puget Sound does its planning policy, which is a little bit different to Thurston County. So that's definitely kind of coming up for discussion with the Growth Management Board. They also talked about an interesting program that they are going to do this summer, which is based on a program in Chicago called Future Leaders in Planning. And they're actually going to have PSRC staff are volunteering, and they got funding for $500 scholarships for high school students to be able to do a summer workshop series where they learn about planning and how to do it in a very kind of intensive way. So there was a lot of interest around that and a lot of discussion, because some of the other jurisdictions up there have tried various things, but this looks like a really good, very systematic, good model program that they're going to try to pull off this summer. And if anybody's interested, I can give you the contact for that if you want to pursue that. And then finally, I would say that comp plan review remains just a really major topic of discussion and will continue to be. And I will continue to encourage folks to go to the Commerce website and to the PSRC website. Their resources grow every day. They have guidances. They have a very useful and fairly brief 23-page introduction to what the growth management update process is and what it entails and why it's important. It's very easy and quick to read, and I certainly would recommend that. I think that's it.
Thank you, Helen. I hope we're going to get the information about the different workshop opportunities you shared, and then also the summer thing in Chicago in the after meeting summary, because I would guess that some people might be interested in either participating or sharing those opportunities.
Well, I could share there wasn't really anything, there aren't any links for that summer program, so I can just share the contact with anybody who's interested. I can share it with you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think if it goes out in the after meeting summary, I think that's like a really great way for people to just sort of refresh themselves and know if they want to share it out too. So if there's an email contact, that would be great.
All right.
Okay. Well, that now we get to hear from Mark. Sorry.
Okay, and just
Go
really
ahead, Mark.
quick, thank you, Chair. And Helen, if you could provide that information to Berlina, then we can make sure it gets into the after meeting summary. I know she already has the slides you provided, but any other information, then we'll make sure it gets in the after meeting summary. Thank you. I do have a few updates. So one, we've got a request for proposals out for a rural transit provider. It's been quite some time since we've had this out for proposal, but just as a reminder to council members, we at TRPC, we provide the rural transit service through a grant that we receive from Washington State Department of Transportation. And then we use that funding to contract with the service provider to actually provide that transit service. And so right now we have a request for proposals out to get the service provider in place for the next handful of years. And so those proposals from responders are due April 21st. And we're hoping to have that agreement in place by June 30th so that we can move forward. We've got some increased funding for some service expansion that we've mentioned briefly before, which includes looking at Saturday service for connecting South County up to the north and to Centralia, and also to reestablish the service out to Yelm, from Rainier to Yelm that we used to have. But that was discontinued at some point in time, and now we're looking to try and get that back. So good things happening with rural transit, and we should have a new service provider, or it could be the same service provider, but an updated agreement, I should say, with a service provider going forward, that we hope to have in place by the end of June. Also, it's come up a little bit here. We at TRPC, we are really looking at federal and state grant opportunities. There is a lot of funding out there right now, at the federal level and at the state level. It's not just for transportation. We're thinking bigger. We're talking about some of the housing issues and the intersection with housing, local planning, real estate that Commissioner Harding also talked about. And so our intention is, and you'll see this as part of my evaluation, is our hope as staff is to line up, use this great opportunity that we've got right now for federal funding to line up a series of planning projects for TRPC that will help us get unfunded needs met from the council and from the Transportation Policy Board. And also really, as folks may remember, roughly about 20 to 30% of our budget relies on us going out and getting soft money to keep us whole, to sustain our operations, but also to get needs met that we can't get met just through the standard base funding that we have. And so Allison Osterberg, we've got some of her time program dedicated to this for this year, because my hope is to really strike while the iron's hot in terms of the federal funding being available, some of the state funding that's available, to line us up for at least the next 5 to 7 years. And so we'll keep you posted on that. We will be working with you all as partners on these applications as we get grants together. We've heard about staff's limited availability, so we are looking for ways to further some of this work and kind of manage how much we ask from your staff in terms of getting this work done, because we definitely heard from folks concerned just about capacity over the next several years. But again, just there's so much opportunity that we want to make sure we're trying to take advantage of that in any way we can. And then I mentioned my evaluation, but just a reminder, you received those materials yesterday, I believe. And so please take some time to give me your feedback. It's really helpful for me as I move forward doing this job for you all and for our community and for our staff. So thank you. And that's what I've got, Chair.
Thank you. I see Helen has a hand up. Helen, did you have a question for Mark on the Executive Director report? Okay, go ahead, Helen.
Yeah, I did actually. And that was one thing I did forget in the update was when they gave their legislative update. I kind of figured people probably are staying on top already of what they care about. But one thing that I'm wondering if TRPC is on is they talked about how there's a real serious problem for homelessness funding going forward, because they were relying on money coming from construction, I guess excise taxes or whatever that's specially designated for that. And that since construction is down, they had this pretty extreme anticipated shortfall in funding for homeless support. And they failed. Somehow Commerce didn't ask for it in the budget. And so it's a hole that hasn't been patched yet. And is that something that TRPC is involved with or can help the cities and the county with?
So that is more of a question for the Regional Housing Council. That includes the county, the cities, others. But if there's a gap that we can help fill, then we're certainly open to requests from the Regional Housing Council to help with those, with any of those gaps. But I would suggest that that's the place where that, at least that conversation should begin. And if there's a role for us, we're happy to play it. But I'd want to make sure that it starts, the conversation starts there.
Well, it sounds like if the legislature doesn't fix it, it's going to be a huge gap. It's going to be a big problem.
I wasn't aware of this, so thanks for the heads up. Appreciate that.
Yeah, do we usually have some, Mark, I have a recollection that we usually typically have the regional housing group come and kind of give us an update, usually like once a year. Haven't we done that in the past?
We have had an update from the Regional Housing Council. It's been a while, so I certainly can make a request if that's something that council would like to hear an update from the Regional Housing Council.
Yeah, especially because it's not something that's necessarily in our wheelhouse, maybe
Okay.
just getting an update. Even if it's just something that we sort of plan for once a year, a quick sort of here's where we are and here's where the work is moving forward so that folks can see where that intersection. I think that thing that's tricky is like not everyone who's on TRPC has representation that's coming back to their body to report. So this is kind of someplace where we can get that information to bring back to our bodies. So
Sounds great. I can definitely reach out and get that for future meetings.
okay, are there any questions about Mark's executive director report? Are we ready to move on to member sharing? Well, I saw a hand up. Oh,
Yeah,
Chris, your
I
hand.
just
Do you have a
wanted,
question? Do you have a question for Mark? Sorry.
yeah, I just wanted to comment on the homeless issue that was brought up, that there have been ads on cable TV to stop that excise tax. Very effective ads with an African-American talking to another individual about why housing costs so much. Why are they adding taxes to further the cost of housing going up? And I think that's probably why it disappeared in the budget, is my guess, because that's probably statewide that ad goes. The homeless issue, of course, it needs some other way of dealing with it rather than this way if it's not going to work this way. So I think it is something to talk to the folks that are dealing with housing, because it's continues to be a serious concern. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea just to make sure that it's part of like what we get a report on every year, just so that we know what other good work is happening in other good organizations. Any other questions for Mark about his executive director's report? And if not, then we'll start to do the member sharing. So if you have something great to share or you're excited to bring something back to your jurisdiction, Clark is ready to share. Go ahead, Clark, you can go first.
Good. First, I'm just going to take 10 seconds on that homelessness issue, because I think we're in a different position from King County. We, recently passed our countywide home fund, which is new money. Our regional staff have been collaborating on a great level and have been winning at what money is available through Commerce. And our jurisdictions have each put staff as part of their regular city budget on working on this issue. So document recording fees are down, and that's an important source of revenue for us related to real estate transactions. But we're not, it didn't turn the faucet off for us, I guess I'd say. So, but my thing I wanted to share is, forsythias, daffodils, heather blooming, cherries blooming, you know what that means? It means it's time to pump up your tires, oil your chain, because May is the Bicycle Community Challenge. And all miles count. If you could help shout this out, because whether you ride in Carhartts or spandex, whether you're going around the cul-de-sac with your grandkids or riding Seattle to Portland, all miles count. And it would just be fantastic if you could help spread the word between now and our next meeting, because we'll already be up and riding at the next meeting.
Thank you, Clark. Okay, we have Robin and then Debbie.
Just wanted to share appreciation for Helen for sharing that information about those listening sessions. I signed up. All I had to do was search Passport to 2044 and it popped up, and it's free to register. So if you punch that in, it's the May 18th session I'm registered for. So thank you for bringing that. And Clark, I will amplify the message. You'll see me out on the road on my bike.
Thank you, Robin. Debbie, go ahead.
So as the intercity transit representative, I wanted to just give a shout out to Emily Bergkamp for starting her new position as the acting CEO of Intercity Transit, and I'm really looking forward to working with her. And I think she's going to hit the ground running because she's already very familiar with years of experience with this. But I just want to recognize that we really appreciated Anne's years of service, and was a great retirement event for Anne. And I really look forward to working with Emily. And as the intercity transit representative, I just wanted to make sure that that recognition was there.
Thank you, Debbie. Eileen, go ahead.
Just wanted to say that the Easter Bunny is coming to Tumwater, and we will be hosting a very large Easter egg hunt at Tumwater High School. Thousands and thousands of eggs will be out there. So just hopefully the weather will cooperate and it'll be a wonderful egg hunt.
When?
Tomorrow, Saturday, sorry. It's tomorrow morning.
All right, get it on your calendars. Thanks, Eileen. I have Carolyn and then Amy.
Hi, I have two things. As a Lacey City Council member, I guess I get to tell you that we have a new sustainability coordinator. Her name is Lindsay Field, and we're all very excited about that. So this was just announced last night, hot off the presses. Also, as your lot representative here, lot has just reached a significant milestone in its history with declaration of substantial completion on the biological process improvements project. And this is significant for our area. So it's something to be applauded, and I think they're going to schedule a celebration for that in May. But back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Carolyn. And congratulations, Lot. Amy, go ahead.
Helen, I signed up for Passport as well. And for those of you who don't know, Teresa Mosqueda, Seattle City Council, is from Olympia. So it's fun to have her on the panel there. And I just wanted to let everyone know we're holding Port 101 for any potential candidates. So I don't know a single person running in District 5, which that's Johnson Point, a little bit into Lacey. So if you're from there or you know anyone who would be interested, we would love for you to serve on the Port Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Chris, go ahead.
Want to indicate that we are finally got that funding thanks to emergency services, worked with Thurston County Emergency Services to put in water trees throughout the unincorporated area of our county. We have some water systems that have a large storage tank that can be accessed in case of an emergency, earthquake, etc., that people can thus get emergency water outside of the urban areas. And that'll be available regionally throughout our county. As we move ahead with implementing those, we obviously looked at where we were going to place them and make sure that they're spread out, so all our many rural residents would have access to emergency water if needed. And the last comment about water I'll make regarding school systems, I get asked all the time if we could provide water service to rural area schools that are being proposed. There are no available water rights. This is a problem the legislature has not grappled with all throughout the state, not just in Thurston County. We notice it because we're growing the fastest. But I'm just telling you right now, if you want to put a school in, you need to put it in an urban area where you can get water, because right now the water rights are not easy to obtain otherwise. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Any additional comments or things you're excited to bring back to your jurisdiction or to share with us? All right, I will do my comments. Thank you, Helen, for the suggested opportunities. That's something I'm going to share with my board members. I'm the person who comes to this so that I can kind of be the voice for schools there, but I think it's really important for all board directors to know a little bit more about the planning process that impacts our work. So thanks for that. And I would like to give a shout out to Intercity Transit. So one of the things that folks might not realize about school transportation is that schools are really only, well, first off, they're chronically underfunded for school transportation, and there's a broken formula to calculate how to transport students. And so your local property tax dollars, at least in our school district, subsidize almost $1 million worth of school transportation every single year. And we are really only funded to transport students who live more than a mile walking route away from their school. And so we face challenges because I think families expect that their students will be transported to school no matter where they live. And so that requires us to think very collaboratively about creating walking routes and systems for kids to get to school safely without sending yellow buses everywhere all over our school system. And one of the solutions that we've been working on for a really long time is trying to empower our young people to use transit to get where they need to go. There are certain schools in our district that are very accessible for especially secondary students. And so I want to give a shout out to the collaboration that's been happening at Jefferson Middle School between Intercity Transit Walk and Roll program and our instructional coach there. So the students who are enrolled in PE classes, health and PE, are all learning how to ride the bus, how to load their bike on the bus, Clark, so they can participate in the challenge. And I just, we're so grateful for that beautiful partnership. And beyond just helping school districts find more efficient ways to move kids to school and home again, one of the things that those kinds of investments do is they really empower young people to have a sense of agency in their ability to travel their own community, to know where they live, to understand how they can be aging into an adult who's contributing to their community. They can get to things they need to go to. They can participate in council meetings or listening sessions or opportunities to have their voice heard. So I'm going to take a little extra time, since we have extra time, to give a more detailed shout out around that and really encourage you all to support those kinds of endeavors that empower young people to become active in their community. We know that for those of us who participated in the Disability Rights Washington Week Without Driving, one of the things that we learned really profoundly is that if you don't have a car to get where you need to go, and if you also have a disability status, your access to participating in the community is really hampered. And children don't have cars to get where they need to go, especially if they're under 16. And many of their families either choose not to purchase cars for them or can't afford to. So the more we do as a collective society to encourage young people to become powerful travelers in their own community and full participants, I think the better we will be, because we'll have more space and time and opportunity to hear their voices. So I'm taking a little extra time for that soapbox. Thank you. And if there's no additional questions or share outs, then I think, besides reminding you to do the evaluation, Mark's evaluation one more time, which is really important. And the committee really appreciates having as many participants from TRPC and TPB as possible. And if we don't have very many folks fill it out, then Berlina's going to send a sort of guilty email from me. So please do it. Do it this weekend. Then I think if there's nothing else, we are adjourned. Bye all.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.